just finished my first neurofeedback session, and it was interesting. It's very easy and yet difficult to let go. I'm deciding that other than making sure I'm not clenching my jaw and trying to relax that and keep my shoulders down away from my ears, and you know what I mean, as long as I'm trying to be in a relaxed physical pose. It is a comfy chair that you sit in, and then he has the screen in front of you, and you watch a video. And so he put on the first video he put on for me. Sorry, these roads are garbage. They're so bumpy. My phone keeps getting all jostled. Okay, here we go. Smooth sailing. So, I watched an episode of The Jetsons, but before that, to get kind of a baseline of where he's like, we work with the brain you bring in. So whereas the EEG had my alpha waves incredibly high, and that was what he thought the focus was going to be for today, my alpha waves during the first 10-minute session where I just watched the screen, and it was mountains and waters, that it was as if I was in a bird's eye view flying through it. And the only way I can think to describe it is it's as if I was watching it with really shoddy internet. Because I say that because it stops every time. So he'll set it at a certain level. I want your alpha waves to be under this, right? Because they are up here, and I want them to come down to here. So your unconscious brain can see if it's starting to get really jagged and slow, as if there's bad internet. Really, you're just supposed to be I want to watch that. I hope that starts again. And focus on the moment of what's happening, and then your unconscious brain will just figure it out. So for me, someone who is an overthinker and ruminates on things, proves to be a little difficult. However, I thought it was going to come to a complete standstill, and then I'd be sitting there in the silence waiting for it to come back on. But based on my brain figuring out what it was supposed to be doing unconsciously, it adapted, so it was just at times. Sometimes it was smooth, other times it wasn't. So that was the first 10 minutes, was at the bird's eye view through over the water and stuff, and there was a really beautiful classical song playing. So that is the positive reinforcement for your brain, right? The fact that it is playing, right? That you get to hear it, that it's not super jittery, that it's not stopping. And so then he took that first 10 minutes and we looked at it. He's like, okay, so your alpha waves are actually pretty low. We're looking at my prefrontal cortex at this juncture. But then, so that was a blue line, and then the yellow line was my anxiety level. And it was really high. He said he would like for it to be around a 5, and mine was pretty consistently at a 20. So I was like, oh, okay. And I told him, I was like, what's pretty wild to me though is I didn't feel anxious in the moment. So that's interesting. My brain was anxious. That part of my brain was extremely anxious, but I didn't feel necessarily the physical manifestation of my anxiety. However, it seems I have just, cracked the code on why my neck and shoulders and back and base of my skull are constantly in excessive tension mode, giving me tension headaches, and just feeling I constantly need a massage, where my shoulder and my neck area is just hard as a rock, because my brain is in this constant mode of anxiety. And it's honestly just so heartbreaking. He was telling me, he was this is learned behavior from when you were young, from when you were a kid. You felt you needed to be in this hypervigilance, and your environment now at home here in this room, like, you don't need to be hypervigilant, and yet your brain, from this learned pattern of behavior from childhood, and then you continued on with it because your brain does what it knows, right? It thinks it's helping me. My brain assumes that I need to stay hypervigilant in order to stay safe. But yeah, though, I found that really heartbreaking and sad, because all I can think of is little Louise being so anxiety ridden, thinking she needed to be everything to everybody, basically. So I think that this is really going to be really great for me. So anyway, moving on to the Jetsons episode, he was like, so he showed me then the alpha waves, and then he booped it down lower. He's like, it's going to be challenging, but the challenge is to try to get your waves below this. And again, this is not something I can actively do. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to let my unconscious brain learn, oh, this is how I get that positive reinforcement. It's not a conscious thing that I'm doing. And what I found interesting, I told him, I was like, well, so I have the screen where I'm seeing the levels go, right? And then the episode is playing. So if I just focus on the episode and I'm trying to, like, I want this to play, I'm just going to sit here and try to watch it. When I felt like it was getting a little too, like, blippy, to where, like, I couldn't quite, that made me think of, I have a toddler, blippy. Sorry, I digress. When it was a little too bad, and I couldn't really even tell what, like, George Jetson was saying. Although, George Jetson apparently is from New York or something, but no one else in his family is. It's just how that character spoke. I never noticed that before. But when I felt like it was getting a little too jittery, I would turn my focus from either looking at the levels or the screen to watch the Jetsons, and I would look down at the bottom, and it was like the Internet Explorer icon, the whatever. There were a couple icons down there, and I would look at that for a second, and I noticed as I was looking at that, the episode would play fine. There were no blips in it. Or if I focused on the pattern of my Vans, my shoes, and I would look at that. And so I told him that when he came in. He's like, yeah, distraction is really helpful. It's helpful to be able to distract yourself from a thing if you're starting to get anxious. And then it helps ease your anxiety. So that's also a learned behavior. And I was worried I was skewing the results or something. And then I realized, oh no, you're not in the moment. You're in your head. Shh, be quiet. Get back in there. Get in the Jetsons. And he's like, it's okay. Your brain learned. So I actually go back tomorrow. I had a session today, and I'm going back tomorrow for another. But positive progress. So that's exciting. Yeah, it makes so much sense, honestly, for me to see the anxiety level. Actually, I was surprised the anxiety levels being as high as they were, because I didn't feel anxious. But really, that just means I am so used to that high level of anxiety where I should be at. I know these numbers are extraneous and don't mean anything, but like, if the level is a 5 where you would like me to be, and I'm at a 20 consistently, like, my body makes sense. Like, having issues with IBS, although I have really kind of conquered that with the app Nerva, and it was a 6-week like hypnotherapy sessions thing, and I feel like I'm doing really good with that. But I'm just saying, like, things like that I had struggled with, things like the trichotillomania, things like the constant knots in my neck and shoulders, like, it all makes such sense. That, like, if sitting there watching a show and just trying to relax, I'm at a 20, you know? So very excited to continue to work on that so that my brain can make adjustments to get that down. I know that that's going to help my day-to-day life so much. It's going to have such a big impact. I'm feeling really positive about it. Yay.